Welcome to another edition of Yorkton Stories, where we take a look at Yorkton's past and present in conversations with people involved in the topic we're exploring, or those who are very familiar with it. There are many interesting stories in the collective minds of Yorkton people, and this podcast loves nothing more than to tap into those. My name is Dick DeReich. This podcast is largely a labor of love, and we are grateful for the support of Harvest Meats and Grain Millers Canada, both here in Yorkton, and others who help out or listen to our stories. You can hear our podcast on our website, yorktonstories.ca, where you will also find photos, links, and other information associated with each podcast when available. In many cases, you can not only hear the stories, you can also see and read information about the podcast topics. We can also be found on all major podcast directories, including Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, TuneIn and Alexa, and iHeartRadio. Search for Yorkton Stories, and you will find us. Back in the 1960s and 70s, men went to the barbershop to get a haircut. Women went to the hair salon or beauty parlor. There was little, if any, overlap. Men's everyday haircuts tended to be uncomplicated. Brush cut or part on one side or combed back, sideburns or no sideburns, long or short, a dab of grill cream or not. Wanted to get really fancy? There was always the shag cut and mullet, like Mick Jagger and Rod Stewart, but rarely seen among working men in Yorkton and elsewhere. Women's hair, not quite so simple. The bouffant was a puffy round shape, the beehive like the bouffant only bigger, the ferret faucet major flick, big long hair, the afro, and Cher's long slick and straight hair. There was the poodle or curly bob, think Lucille Ball or Jackie Kennedy, or the pixie cut and bangs like Audrey Hepburn, criticized at the time for looking too much like a men's haircut. Today there is arguably only one men's barbershop that only cuts men's hair. But 60, 50, 40 years ago, there were lots of options. Milbert Lesser cut hair on 2nd Avenue in the lower level of the Shepherd Adamson building. Barry Ross had a shop in the lower level of what was then the Holiday Inn, which went through a number of expansions and name changes, but is now a very large vacant area on East Broadway. Lawrence Statistician was on 1st Avenue. Mr. Glenn was at the Parkland Mall when it first opened in the 1970s. Fredek Temachuk was on Betts Avenue, and the front of the Stag Billiards, overlooking Broadway where the former provincial liquor store is located, was where Ben DeVries had his barbershop, first with Ed Marianchuk as a partner, and when Ed left in 1961, Ben was joined by Tony Zahayek, a young fellow from Theodore who had gone to barbering school in Edmonton. And so Ben and Tony's barbershop was established. It became a bit of an iconic institution in Yorkton, occupying over the years various locations on the very short stretch of 3rd Avenue South between Broadway and Livingstone Streets. For the past 11 years, Sean Craib-Petkau has owned and operated the Parlor Barbershop, first on Broadway, then on 1st Avenue, and now on 2nd Avenue. It is, in many ways, a throwback to the men's barbershops of the mid to later 1900s, complete with memorabilia from those days and a barber chair salvaged from the Country Inn, where Mary the Barber, nobody seems to remember her last name, and later Ron Bain were cutting hair. Ben DeVries had emigrated to Canada and Yorkton in 1948, part of the first wave of post-Second World War immigrants from Europe. He was 21 at the time, but had been cutting hair in Groningen, a city in northern Netherlands, since he was 15 years of age. He was cutting hair in Yorkton within 3 days of arriving. He married Marion in 1950. Ben retired from Ben and Tony's in May of 2008, after cutting hair for about 66 years, 60 of them in Yorkton. Now nearing 97 years of age, Ben still lives in Yorkton. Tony Zahayak carried on, first at their location on 3rd Avenue South, until that block was torn down to make way for the liquor store and the park next to it, and then on Betts Avenue, until he closed up shop in 2013 after 52 years of barbering. I asked him if being on his feet all the time bothered him. No, he said, but his arms started to get sore. He and Joyce were married in 1965 and also still live in Yorkton. Those who knew Tony will remember that he was seldom at loss for words. He readily admits that. And vigorous discussion was encouraged and seldom lacking when the men gathered at the shop, occupying 8 chairs waiting for their turn and having a cup of coffee. Tony did much of the talking. The result, Tony says, is that there were days when Ben would cut hair twice as many guys as he did. We had a long and somewhat rambling conversation with Tony, touching on lots of topics, not surprisingly. And we talked to Sean about Parlor Barbershop, which, he tells us, was a direct result of Tony closing down in 2013, motivating and inspiring him to get into the business of cutting men's hair. The pool hall, Stag Billiards, owned by Bert Lexier, had a barbershop in front, as we mentioned, and that is where Tony joined Ben, starting a 47-year partnership. Clement's Grocery was next door, and there were other businesses and offices along that block of Broadway and around the corner on both sides of 3rd Avenue South between Broadway and Livingstone Street.
I think haircuts when I started were, 75 cents, or $1. Yeah, it wasn't very much. That was a long time ago, yeah.
When did you, you're what, 82 now?
Yeah.
And you started barbering when you were 19 or so? 18?
About 19, yeah.
Yeah. So that was 63 years ago.
Yeah. Let me see. I bought a brand new Volkswagen at Border Motors, and I think I paid $1,700 for it. Back then. Brand new Volkswagen.
First car?
First car. No, first car was Norm Roebuck's TV station.
Yeah.
Yeah, he had a 56 Chevy. I bought that. And then I bought this Volkswagen. I remember I smashed it up first time going home. I just picked it up. You know, the highways weren't wide, eh?
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, here comes a car this way. I'm coming this way.
Yeah.
So he had to pass this guy. So I kind of leaned over, but when he went by, he swiped the whole side of my car. He put me in a ditch, you know. Things were cheap, Dick, you know. I bought a 64 Pontiac, Parisienne, 2-door hardtop, bucket seats and everything for $4,200.
Yeah.
My neighbor just bought a truck there and he paid damn near $100,000.
Yeah.
That's stupid. Why would a guy spend that much money on it? Huh? My wife bought the car, but I always had a truck because we got a cabin at the lake, eh? You want to buy a cabin?
No. Were you Gooseberry?
Yeah.
Which beach?
Donaldcon subdivision.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
In the park there. Yeah.
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 I built that myself too. 4 bedrooms. I knew all my relatives were going to come. So I built a 4-bedroom. And you know, when I built it, they never come and help me once till I was finished. And then they all start coming. This wasn't easy, you know, 2-story. But I enjoy carpenter work. I really do. The house was a prefab. I did a lot of the work in here. My basement, I should show you, I completely did my basement myself. But I like carpenter work. So let's get back to barbering, okay?
So you started be the early 60s and joined with Ben.
Yeah.
Started at the Stag and then moved into various places.
That short little street there, just when you turn the corner, was the first place was on the left-hand side, right on the corner there. Towards the end there, with Fred Broadfoot.
Fred Broadfoot, he made glasses.
Glasses, okay, yeah. That's what it was.
Because Ken McCrossan was right next door to him, a ophthalmologist.
Yeah.
And Bruce Shaw was just on the other side with the leader post.
And we were right at the corner. And then we moved across to 1, 2, 3 places, I think. Stuff was being sold and sold, so we had to move, you know.
As we mentioned, he and Joyce were married in 1965 and still make their home right here in Yorkton.
I went with her, I think, when she was 12 and I was 13, I think. We had a good marriage. Raised 2 kids.
Yeah.
2 got real good jobs.
None of them became barbers?
No, I wouldn't let them. You got to go someplace to get a pension day.
Although now retired since 2013, Tony still does the occasional haircut at home.
I still do an odd haircut once in a while.
You had friends come over and you give them a snip?
I just like the bullshit. That's one thing in a barbershop. I always like people, Dick, no matter where I go. Even if you came to my shop and then, went some other place, it didn't bother me. I still saw you and I'd say, hi, Dick. It's your life. You do what you want.
47 years is a long time for 2 partners to work together and get along.
Ben was a real good. We had, I think maybe once in all those years, I think we had kind of an argument, but we had a good relationship. Very good. Yeah, I looked after my own. I had this stall, and we knew how much the rent was in that place we rented. I forget what it was, but I'd pay for half the rent. He'd pay for half the rent. See?
Yeah.
I'd pay for half the power bill. He'd pay for half. So anything he made was his.
Yeah.
Anything I made was mine.
Yeah. You split the cost.
Yeah. Split the cost. That's what we did.
Yeah.
No problems asked.
Yeah.
And Benny was a very good barber too. He was from Holland. He was, he was good. We had, he's 90 something now. Yeah.
But that's a long, that's a long partnership.
With no problems. We see you tomorrow, Benny. See you tomorrow. And all this kind of stuff. No, you know what? It was my own business, and that was his business.
Yeah.
If he wanted to take a day off,
it's up to him.
as long as you paid your rent and power bill, I don't care. You can take a month off.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And same here. If I want to go for a weekend or something.
So when you guys started a bucket haircut, the style at that time, Dean Bradshaw, Barry Bradshaw's son. Dean says, my dad used to march us down to Ben and Tony's for our brush cuts.
Yeah. Yeah.
Were the kids' cuts, right?
Well, yeah, because you know what? There's no such thing as long hair then. Yeah. You cut it off because, even $1 was a lot of money then, And I got the one story I could really remember, like kids don't sit still, little kids, like 2 years old or something, and you always tell them, sit still, or, it might pinch you or something. They sit still. I had a rubber ear. Looked like a real ear, but it was rubber, right? So if he's moving around, I put it on top of his head and I drop it in front of him. I said, told you to sit still. He, that worked. I remember I dropped the one and his little kid took off down the street with my chair cloth like a Superman, He was going down the street and his dad chasing him. No way, you got to get his ear cut off. But that was a good trick. Yeah. Boy, they would sit after that.
The hairstyles at that time were simpler. It was just basic.
Mostly brush cuts.
Yeah, brush cuts
and just kind of short.
Yeah.
It's going back to that now, Dick. Yeah. See, you're watching TV. There's no sideburns or nothing. They're just cutting it up.
Well, now the whole bald look. Guys shave their head bald.
A friend of mine come in every spring. Every spring he would come in. He'd get it cut off, right to the scalp. Yeah. Because he didn't have time to get a haircut, So he got at my chair and I says, you know what, we're going to play a little joke here because there was about 6 guys waiting. We'll pretend we're getting an argument and I'll take the clippers right in the front and I'll just whip your hair off, He said, okay, So we're cutting around, all of a sudden he's getting longer, man, I don't know. But we got in a little argument area and I take the clippers here and I take that and he, what's that? And other guys, they're sitting in the chair, their eyes are coming out. I thought they're going to leave me. Oh, they didn't look at him, and we were arguing, He got on the chair, and he's mad. He never even paid for it. He went out the door, And those guys, I said, next. Nobody wanted to get in my chair. And then he come back, and he paid me. I still remember looking at people's face, It was funny,
At that time, everybody just kind of wandered in and took a chair, right? I mean, there was no appointments.
No. And you know what?
Appointments.
I do haircuts. I do a guy's haircut. And 2 days later, he's back. And I said, did I do something wrong? He says, no. He says, my wife's shopping. He says, I come here to listen to all the bullshit. He says, I'm not going to go shopping. Yeah.
You guys had the coffee pot on all the time.
Oh, yeah,
right?
I did. Yeah, in the back there.
Yeah.
Yeah, and donuts.
Yeah.
Every day I had donuts.
Well, it was like you guys had like a little social club there.
Social club, yeah. Like I
Right.
said, I go in the morning, there was like 6, 7 guys standing at the door. I only had 8 chairs.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they would come in and had coffee pots, and they have their coffee, and and sit around and talk, and they'd be talking sometimes. As the guy was next, he says, "No, take the next guy. I'm busy talking here."
Yeah.
They just like talking.
Yeah.
And I enjoyed it. Listening to them.
Well,
Talking.
you also did a fair bit of talking because Ben didn't do a whole lot of talking.
No, I like talk. I like the bullshit mostly. And no, Benny never did.
Because I remember Ben would just kind of stand there and grin.
Yeah, and cut hair.
And cut hair and listen to you guys.
Yeah, and he just listened. Yeah, because he'd do my 2-to-1. I was talking too much, and he'd be whipping them off.
He would do 2 cuts to your 1.
Yeah, because I'd be talking, and he'd be whipping them off.
So did the guys that came in, did they care whether it was you or Ben, or they just...
Well, Ben had his customers, some, and I had mine, but most of them didn't care.
Yeah.
But, it was okay.
Yeah.
There's times there'd be 2 guys waiting, and I'd be waiting for Ben, I'd be doing nothing.
Yeah.
And there's times I was cutting hair, and I have 2 guys waiting for me, and Ben was doing nothing,
That's their choice, right?
Yeah, that's their choice, and it never bothered me.
Yeah.
That's what you want. That's what you want.
Well, that's a long time to spend in one business. I mean,
yeah, but you know what? If I'd do it over again, I just enjoyed it. Ben and I used to cut each other's hair. Like I'd cut his and he cut mine, But then he started to shake pretty good here. So
no, that's not good.
No. So then I told him, I said, "No, that's okay, Benny. I'll still cut your hair. You come."
There was also hockey in Tony's life, playing for his hometown Theodore Buffaloes, and a Terrier season ticket holder for probably 5 decades. No shortage of opinion about the game and the local teams either.
You played hockey for the Theodore Buffaloes. They were in the Bates League.
Yep.
How long did you play hockey?
Long time. I remember, my dad was poor. He was a blacksmith, eh? He never made much money,
Your dad's name was Tony too, wasn't
Tony,
it?
yeah.
Yeah.
And he bought me this pair of skates. And they were so damn big, I thought I'd about put my shoes inside them, but I used to wear about 10 pairs of socks, because that's all I could afford. Times are tough, Dick, And I'd go down the rink and put these big skates on, my foot was like this. Well, I skated, yeah. Then they bought me another pair, and I kept going. I loved hockey. Like I says, I go to Terrier games. I'm still a season ticket holder. But the only thing I don't like now about the Terriers is there are no local boys on there. You got to have local boys. You want to draw the fans.
Yeah.
But all these kids are from all over the place, Alaska and the States. And you mean to tell me a town of 18,000 we haven't got a couple of guys who can play hockey? Come on. I have a paper, I don't know what year it was, but they had all local boys on that team, and they won the damn league. Like there was Hawes and
84, 85, 1984, 1985.
Yeah, I had that. I got that paper.
Yeah. That was Jerry James's team.
Yeah, Jerry James.
There was the 2 Hawes boys. It was Thompson's from Edinbury.
Yeah, all those.
It was all.
What do you call it, from Springside? There was guys from all over the place. You got to have local kids, because Grandpa come or Grandma come.
Ben retired in May of 2008.
So did he retire when you were still on 3rd South?
Yep.
And you stayed on there for a bit?
Yeah.
And then they built the liquor store?
Yeah, and I had to move.
Yeah.
So then I moved to Best Avenue.
Yeah.
And I don't know how many years I spent there.
When did you quit? Do you remember? Joyce would remember, probably.
I'll have to ask her. I'm getting old, Dick. I'm starting to forget. So I went to a grocery store and I come home with something to say, where's my coffee you're supposed to pick up? And I had oranges or something, you know. Well, didn't you want oranges? She said, no, I want coffee.
On his final day at the Betts Avenue barbershop, Tony cut Ben's hair, cut hair of some friends and longtime customers, and Betts Avenue business owners came for coffee and cake. And then he locked the doors behind him for the final time. But that was exactly the thing that led Sean Craib-Petkau to become a barber and open a shop that was in many ways reflective of the old-time barbershops, a place where men got together, where conversations are held, a bit of an informal gathering place.
My training I took out in New Brunswick. When I came home, I was looking for a place, and at that time, there was no available retail locations in downtown.
Yeah.
Everything was full. You know, it was really a bustling few blocks. And the guys from Cab, I knew them as acquaintances, and I approached them, and they were willing to rent me, you know, a few hundred square feet of their store, and that gave me my start.
So one chair?
Actually, I bought the chair from Ron Bain. He was on his way out when I was on my way in. My dad and I went to his little room up at the city limits and talked to him and spent a few afternoons with him, and he finally agreed to let go of the chair.
Then First Avenue, and now on Second Avenue next to the Yorkton Hotel, a space that was the longtime home of Norma Keeman's Yorkton florists and later a paint store. It even has a pool table at the back of the room, perhaps an homage to the old Stag Billiards and its barbershop.
You went for training to be a barber. Now, barbering is not something I'm assuming that most people coming out of school, high school, would kind of look forward to as a trade that they might want to learn.
No.
What was your attraction to barbering?
That's a great question. I wasn't coming out of high school. I had been graduated for 5 years at that point. And in that time, I was working as a musician. I was touring, I was recording, and
starving?
And starving. Yeah, you better believe that. It's not an easy life on the road. And that life brought on some problems for me. And at that same time, the business that my family owned, we were in the process of selling. And I really looked around and I didn't know what I was going to do. You know, barbering is not a career that I had ever previously thought of or even considered. But I can't remember who told me now. This is obviously many years ago, but they had said that Ben and Tony's was going to be shutting down. Tony was retiring. And then it clued in, well, there's going to be a need. You know, there's going to be a need for somebody to cut men's hair. So I did some searching around and I found that there was a barbering specific course in New Brunswick. It would give me this proper certification to work in Saskatchewan. And so I just took a leap of faith. And that was summer of 2013, packed up my Jeep and moved to St. John and started my training. At that time, it was 6 months.
Was it strictly how to cut hair, or was it more extensive as far as running a business and all? I mean, it's one thing to cut hair. It's another thing to run a business. Right?
Yes. And, you know, not everybody that can run a business can cut hair. Not everybody that can cut hair can run a business. Fortunately, the course at that time, it did kind of touch on all those avenues. You know, I got there. I didn't know what the textbook was going to entail, but it started right with the history of barbering, going back, 3,000 years. And the tools that they used from the ancient Egyptians, the Greeks, the Romans, up to bloodletting and dentistry and all those totally bananas practices that we used to take on. And I'm glad we don't do that anymore. But it went from there to obviously, the practical side of being a barber, how to cut hair, how to use your tools, how to do shaves, the technique and strategy and everything there. And there was also an aspect of making a business plan, where suppliers and what products you carry and what your hours will be and what you'll charge and really breaking that down to just give you an idea of if you want to open a shop or if you want to rent a chair in somebody else's shop. For myself, there was no chair to rent. I had to really figure it out as I went. it took me a number of years to figure out how to properly run a business. This was my job.
You do shaves with straight razors.
Yes, sir. Well, we use what's called a shavette.
Yeah, but there's not a whole lot of people doing that. I mean,
No.
men used to do that themselves, right?
Yes.
And nicks galore all over your neck.
And
right?
that's just it. I think maybe now it's a misconception we look back on. But the straight razor really was developed and designed to use on somebody else. I find it difficult to shave myself with my straight razor, but it's second nature to do it on somebody else due to the hand positioning, and the way that you lay your client out. And it's also why Mr. Gillette developed the double-edged safety razor, because it was a safer way to shave, which took that out of the barber's hands, so to speak.
I don't think anybody else in Yorkton is doing.
No, not in Yorkton.
No.
There's other shops in the province now that have since opened up since I've been home. I know there's one in Regina and one in Saskatoon, operators, I should say, that have been going just a little bit longer than me, but it is picking back up as a trade in this province. But in Yorkton, I'm the only guy my other barber and I are the only ones that Patel straight razor shaves.
You have steady hands, I assume.
Yes, sir. Have to.
That's not where you want to make a slip up if you're doing that.
No. It's pretty serious.
Yeah. You finished school. Mm-hmm. You became a barber. You learned the art of barbering. You came back to Yorkton. Probably could have gone almost anywhere.
I did think about that a lot. The college that I was at required a 3-week practicum after the course. And so I was working in a small town on the North Shore of New Brunswick called Campbellton. And I was working for a great guy up there. And it kind of, made me realize that I could do this anywhere. There's another fellow from my course. He was going back to the Halifax, Dartmouth area. There's a well-established, a great barbering scene out there in Eastern Canada. Barbershops had always maintained a neighborhood presence. They were everywhere. And I just thought, well, there's too many. Competition is too stiff. Yeah. And so I did, I made the decision to come back home to follow through on my original plan that Tony was retiring. There's a gap to fill. It turns out to have been, the best decision I've made in a long time.
The barbershop that you have is not kind of your typical, come in, get a haircut, get out type of operation. A lot of them, and I'm thinking back to Ben and Tony's, and you said you got your first haircut there.
Yes.
That was for a lot of guys as much coffee row, a place to get together, as the old Holiday Inn or any coffee shop.
Right.
You have recreated that in a sense right here.
Yeah.
Why?
It happened organically, but it was an important, nostalgic aspect to incorporate into the business. And when I first opened, I was strictly come in, sit down, wait your turn. I'll get to you when I get to you. I had 8 waiting chairs, and all day long, those chairs would be full. I wasn't taking breaks. I wasn't taking lunch. I was staying late. I was miserable. I was overworked. I was tired all the time. I couldn't figure out why I was so grouchy. As much as I loved people being around, I loved the busy shop. In the mornings, we would yell at CBC News on the TV. And in the afternoons, we'd watch ball games on Sportsnet. Yeah. And it was a good atmosphere. But it being just myself in the shop, the workload became too much. So I instituted a walk-in scheduling system. And shortly after that time, and it worked quite well. People would come early, they'd stay late, but you knew you were getting a haircut. I wasn't, I was taking a lunch. I was getting out of the shop, and things were going really well. And that atmosphere continued on. And then lockdown happened, COVID happened, and everything had to change. There was limits on how many people could be in the store once we came back to work. And nobody really knew what that was going to look like.
Were you closed for a while?
I was shut down for 2 months for the initial federal lockdown. That was actually kind of funny too. I had a lot of offers to cut people's hair at their home, at my home. People were offering a lot of money just for a haircut. And I decided to take the break. Also, I mean, I didn't want to get sick.
Yeah.
No, I didn't know what was happening at that time. It was kind of a strange thing in that something as simple and routine as getting a haircut became a serious ordeal for a lot of people. And we were joined in humor in the home haircuts. You know, everybody was buying clippers. Guys were getting their wives to cut their hair. And I saw the results of some of that. And it was not good.
Not pretty.
But there's also some wives that I would offer a job to because they were, you know, the guys came back looking not bad. Yeah. And it was really astonishing to me that became a connecting point for so many people. And when lockdown lifted, I never felt so appreciated. You know, people were coming back. I didn't see the same person for probably 6 or 8 weeks. Every day was just more people coming through. You know, I think partially looking for some human connection, but also just for the service that I provided. Yeah. It was a lot of fun.
Today, the business has grown with Lowell Sherwin, also born and raised in Yorkton, joining Sean at the shop. It's a busy place, and cutting hair isn't the only thing that happens there. Going back to his music days, Sean has convinced musicians passing through to put on a bit of a concert at the spacious shop for 20 or 30 people.
So now you have a system where people come in and write their name on a chalkboard.
On a chalkboard, yep. We got time slots.
And when it's full, it's full.
That's it.
So what happens in the morning? You get people coming in, or like you don't take phone calls, do you?
No.
So they have to come in person.
We got a lineup every morning.
Really? Just to put their name on a chalkboard so they can get a haircut.
as crazy as it sounds.
Well, you know, yes. There's something good about creating demand when you're in business, right? I mean,
it's a smart move.
Yeah.
But that also happened accidentally. These are just the things that I instituted, and this is the culture that grew around the store. We split our day. The mornings, I wanted to, again, maintain that walk-in atmosphere. Kind of, you don't know who's coming. You don't know what your day looks like. It's kind of exciting. You know, every morning before we unlock the door, it could be mayhem, or it could be nobody.
Yeah.
And I like that. But I've also noticed that, you know, the guys that are waiting, conversation strikes up outside. Oftentimes they're talking about how crazy it is, how early you have to get to the store to get a spot. But there's connection taking place. They're meeting guys that they didn't know before. Or, you know, I get a lot of guys that work at the mine. They come into town, they're just getting off night shift and the shop is just opening. So they're sitting there together. You know, they just spent the last 12 hours with each other, but they want to get a haircut before they go home. And here they are. And we also have, since COVID, due to needing, you know, some idea on who is coming and who is going, I instituted taking appointments through a website. So we split our day. Mornings are for walk-ins. Afternoons are for appointments booked through the website. And there's not a lot of crossover on those two groups. Guys that like to walk in. People whose lives are more scheduled, or, you know, they work, or kids, especially after school, they have the opportunity to book in, and that works really well for them. That's the biggest thing. You know, customer service is number one in this business. I can give a great haircut. I can give an okay haircut. I'm sure I've given bad haircuts. But if I maintain a high level of customer service, people will always come back. And so you have to be accommodating in that.
The whole concept of a barbershop being a social center. There's not a whole lot of barbershops where there's a pool table. Well, the stag billiards used to be.
Yes.
Where Mary was in front and the billiards in back, but that was a whole different atmosphere.
Right.
And you have a shop that looks more like an old style barbershop.
Yes.
And you are doing musical performances in a barbershop.
Yeah.
Which also is somewhat unusual, I would suggest.
It's unique. Yeah. It's unique.
And that comes from your personal musical background, I'm assuming.
I was a touring musician. We played a lot of great venues, unique venues, strange venues, you know, houses and bars and barns and parking lots and back alley gatherings. And you can have music anywhere. And where there's music, there's community. You know, and these things, it still all ties back into that idea of bringing people together for a common purpose. You know, whether that's to get a haircut or to see a great Saskatchewan musician, or to, well, we don't have a TV anymore, but to watch a ball game.
Or to talk.
Or to talk, exactly.
You've had 2 or 3 performances fairly recently.
Yes.
Jeffrey Straker was here.
Bell Plain was here.
And you had one...
JJ Voss was here in October.
Voss, yeah. What do they think about a barbershop as a venue?
They've all loved it. And the room sounds great. You know, the where the shop space is, it's just a big open hall, basically, with really nice acoustics. And you put a few rows of chairs in there. It doesn't take much for the room to look full. And it's just a nice, warm, inviting atmosphere. And yeah, you know, they've all had a good time. And it's very easy to interact with the crowd. There's no stage. Everybody's on the same level. And I think that really opens it up to a more intimate environment.
But most musicians are looking at wanting to sell as many tickets as possible because tickets is revenue.
Yes.
Right? And here you have a capacity of...
Well, we had 31 here the other night.
2 or 3 dozen.
Which, from the point of view of an artist, it's a hard sell. But it's a Sunday afternoon on a day that would usually be a write-off anyways. So far, everybody's been coming from somewhere and going home to Regina, basically.
Yeah.
So from that point of view, it's worked out all right.
Who comes to those? Is it your barbering customers, or is it a whole different crowd?
It's a whole different crowd.
Yeah.
It's the Yorkton Arts Board crowd.
Yeah.
You know, it's actually my wife's parents, and they're from Calvington. They've come down. They've brought people from Calvington. They're very supportive, but not a lot of my customers come, and that's okay.
Yeah.
You know, it's introducing people to my space, my shop, to myself, and what I'm about and what I'm trying to do.
You also performed the other day, or you performed with
I performed in the past. Yeah.
Yeah.
I played a couple songs with Jeffrey, and I played a couple songs with JJ.
What kind of music did you do when you were on tour?
I wrote folk songs, acoustic singer-songwriter, just me. I listened to way too much Bob Dylan. I was 19, I moved to Winnipeg, and I had an iPod Shuffle with just a whole bunch of Bob Dylan bootlegs. And I'd sit on the bus, I'd ride the buses and just listen to music and write music. Took on a different persona as to who I am today. But of course, when you're 19 and full of arrogance, you know, you're a different person then. But it still was something that I love to do, you know, to just pick up my guitar and play it, and to share that with other people, you know. And now bringing artists to the store, I can kind of live vicariously through them. We still know a lot of the same people, you know. A lot of the same people are still in the Saskatchewan arts and music scene as to when I was in it. So that's kind of neat too.
Yeah.
You know, you kind of catch up, and who's this, and what are they doing, and where are they now?
Yeah. Barbers they listen to people's problems. They listen to people's, complaints and back. And I'm sure you get some of that, or a lot of it.
Oh yeah, a lot of it. And you know, we complain too. Sometimes it's just nice to get things off your chest. You know, this job for me is also therapy. I work through my problems, and it's all about sharing common experience and learning from one another. Yeah. To me, there's no better environment for that. There's no alcohol here. It's a truthful environment. It's an honest environment. You know, we bullshit. There's no doubt about that, but it's genuine, always.
So it is a place where people can, if they need to, they can unload without judgment, without...
Always. Yeah, of course.
You now have a second barber.
Yes.
You've lightened your own load a little bit.
Yeah, I've spread it around. A couple years ago, I approached a fellow that I have known in Yorkton for quite a while. Lowell Sherwin is his name. I approached him and I said, hey, I need help. A number of years before that, I had given him a pair of clippers that I wasn't using. He expressed some interest in cutting guys that he worked with and whatever else. You know, the seed was planted. And it's interesting how, you know, you don't realize the impact that your decision can make till a number of years later. I approached him, and he said he was kind of at a crossroad point in his life, much as I was when I picked this up. And so he agreed. I sent him to the same college that I went to. And he took his course, passed, no problem, very talented barber, came home, and we've been working together since April of 2023. And it has made my life better. I think it's made his life better. It's made the shop better. Customers like that there's two of us. They don't like the way that I cut hair, they go to him, which is okay.
Yeah.
And it's good too, just for me to have somebody to bounce back and forth off of. And, we have a good friendship and a good rapport. People see that, people appreciate that.
Yeah. The style of hair cutting has changed. I sometimes think it's almost coming full circle.
Yes.
Because back when I was a kid, and that's a long time ago, but even when I was a teenager and an early adult, the sides got shaved up, and there was a brush cut or something on top. We all went through the long hair phase, certainly I did, 60s and 70s and, ponytails and all that kind of stuff. And now it seems whenever I see, people with kind of contemporary haircuts, they're either bald, like there is nothing left, and because they've got rid of it themselves, not necessarily that they're naturally bald, or again, we're back to, the sides and the back being shaved up and something being piled on top.
Yeah.
Have we come full circle?
It has. Everything is fair game. It's an interesting thing, because when I was going to school 10 years ago, that's when the, Mad Men was popular. The show Boardwalk Empire was popular. This whole gangsterism idea was kind of cool in pop culture. So you had, fades and low tapers, slick backs, side parts, and we'd cut in the part lines so it was very clean and crisp, and everything was really, it was glued down, and that look was popular. I got a poster here in my lunchroom of Marlon Brando in The Godfather, and that's kind of what everybody was trying to get to. And at that time, my instructor, phenomenal barber, his name's David Little in St. John, New Brunswick. He started cutting hair in the 70s in an Italian barbershop. And so he learned classic barbering, classical styling. And that's what he taught us. And that was the best gift he'd given me, because I could interpret what he was doing and realize that this goes with any style. And also at that time, he said the next thing to come back is going to be the mullet. And we all laughed at him. Sure enough, Here we are. We get multiple a week. And I kind of like them. For some guys, it looks great. If you got good curly wavy hair, try a mullet. I'll cut it for you. But barbering now does really incorporate all of your technique. Clipper work, scissor cuts, longer hair. These are things that when I was in school, I kind of overlooked because, those aren't going to be important in what I do. Well, yeah, especially being one of a kind in a small town, working by myself. I really had to focus on being good at all of it. Whatever the picture was that a guy showed me, okay, let's go. And that's what I really enjoy about the hands-on experience of my job is it's problem solving. It's tactile. It's working with my hands. It's creative. As a musician, I look for ways to be creative and artistic, and barbering gives me that. You have to have a vision. It's like sculpting. Somebody comes in, they haven't had a haircut in 8 months, and they show you a picture of a high and tight skin fade, and you say, okay, how do I get from this to that? It's a lot of fun.
For some people, it becomes a personal statement.
Exactly. And here in Yorkton, in this market, we have all of that. There's of course shops in the cities who focus on a higher end customer base. People who always comb their hair, who never wear a hat, who go through a tub of product every month. I've got those guys here in town, but I've got farmers, I've got miners, I've got I've got people who just need it shorter because they're wearing a hard hat 14 hours a day, and or they never take their ball cap off, and that's okay. I can spend as much time as I want on their haircut, and if they just put their hat on when I'm done, I got to accept that. It's a humbling experience. It's a utility thing. You just need your hair to be shorter because it's in the way.
So how do you feel when you see a guy that's totally bald and shaves his own head? There's a lot of guys that just decided to do away with getting haircuts. They still have some hair.
Right.
And you can buy the things that you hold in your hand and you just go over the top and everything's gone, right?
Yep. And that's okay too.
Yeah.
But I tell those guys, come to me, I'll do it for you, and I'll clean up the mess. You won't have hair all over your bathroom. So
watch for and listen to another podcast in about 3 weeks. Visit yorktonstories.ca to hear this and all previous podcasts. And there you can also sign up to our email list so we can let you know when a new episode is available. Thanks again to our sponsors, Harvest Meats and Grain Millers Canada, both here in Yorkton. And thank you for listening. Your comments and suggestions are always welcome. Get in touch through our website or by emailing Dick, D-I-C-K, at yorktonstories.ca. We'll talk again soon.